In a mansion located in London, a man and a woman enter the house. The woman, who appears to be a prostitute, is complimented by the man. Suddenly, the sound of footsteps is heard, and a mysterious man dressed in red emerges. The man in red claims to be a member of the Hellsing organization, also known as the Royal Order of Religious Knights. The man in red pulls out a long barrel pistol and points it at the prostitute, telling the man to get out of the way. He then shoots the prostitute, killing her instantly as she turns into dust, revealing that she was a vampire. The man in red disappears from the scene, leaving the man with many questions. The Hellsing organization and a London police department quickly arrive on the scene, evacuating the mansion for safety purposes. The vampire hunter, Alucard, reports to the head of the Hellsing organization that the job has been completed. The London Police Department receives reports of strange occurrences in Cheddar Village, leading them to call upon Division 11. However, most of the D11 members are unable to be contacted and are presumed dead, leading the Hellsing organization to be called in to handle the situation. Integra Hellsing, the head of the Hellsing organization, takes command of the operation and sends in a single member, Alucard, to handle the situation. Alucard arrives in the forest and encounters a young female police officer named Sarah's Victoria. After escaping from the ACP, Sarah's runs into Jack, a wounded member who confesses everything to her before turning into a ghoul and attempting to bite her. Sarah's is unable to bring herself to shoot Jack and instead blinds him with a pistol shot. She runs for the base, but all of her colleagues have been infected, leaving her alone. She encounters a ghoul in the forest, but is saved by Alucard. Sarah stumbles upon a church and meets the priest, who demonstrates his vampire powers by using hypnosis and telekinesis on her. The priest intends to turn Sarah's into a ghoul, but Alucard arrives and saves her. The priest summons a D11 dual army, but Alucard insults and berates the priest before falling to a barrage of bullets. With no hope left, Sarah's gives up until Alucard's blood starts to move towards his body, regenerating him. Alucard pulls out his gun, the castle, and starts shooting the priest's ghouls. Alucard states that guns are useless against him. Alucard, now fully recovered, draws his weapon, the castle, and starts shooting the priest's ghouls with ease. The ghouls had previously exhausted all their ammo trying to defeat Alucard, leaving them defenseless against his attack. The priest, witnessing the massacre of his ghouls, attempts to reason with Alucard and asks why he's attacking when they're both vampires. Alucard replies that instant vampires like the priest are like cockroaches, multiplying without control, and he has no respect for them. He also explains that he serves humans for his own reasons. The priest tries to hide behind Sarah's, mocking her because Alucard won't kill humans. Conflicted, Alucard realizes the only way to save her is to turn her into a vampire. The priest tries to reason again, but Alucard ignores him and asks Sarah's if she wants to become a vampire. She agrees, and Alucard shoots her in the heart, killing both her and the priest. Alucard turns her into a vampire to save her life. Later, Alucard reports the mission to Integra. She scolds him for taking too long and orders an ambulance for Sarah's, who is wrapped in blankets and dazed. Alucard requests for Sarah's to be transferred to the Hellsing organization, but Integra refuses, telling him not to act selfishly. Integra then walks away, snapping that Hellsing will withdraw. Sarah's Victoria, a newly hired member of the Hellsing organization, is under the tutelage of Captain Peter Ferguson. On her first mission to kill a vampire, she quickly sets up her sniper rifle, but Ferguson criticizes her speed. Meanwhile, a woman is spotted acting suspiciously by a couple leaving a party. The woman suddenly appears below the woman, grabs her legs, and turns out to be a ghoul. Sarah's watches as the ghoul attacks the woman, but is unable to pull the trigger due to trauma from PTSD. Ferguson orders Gareth Henderson to shoot instead, and the ghoul is killed. The Hellsing cleanup crew arrives to cover up the incident. Back at the base, everyone except for Sarah's recites the organization's motto. Ferguson notices Sarah's exclusion and tries to talk to her about how she's being treated like a guest. But before he can explain, Walter C. Dornas interrupts and offers to take care of Sarah's needs. He shows her to her room in the manor's basement, where he explains her daily routine and warns her not to go out during the day. Bored, Sarah thinks about her past and tries to sleep, but is unable to. She gets up and goes to the manor's entrance, where she is greeted by two unknown men. Sir Integra then arrives and warns Sarah's not to go around recklessly drinking human blood, which angers Sarah's. Integra then leaves for her office. Integra lights a cigar in her office as Alucard appears through the wall. She comments on Alucard's habit of turning female friends into vampires and tells him to train Sarah's properly. They discuss the latest mission involving a series of murders committed by vampires heading north. Alucard says that these worthless vampires are spreading, but Integra reminds him that negative comments aren't part of his duty. He then leaves, passing through the wall. Back in her office, Sarah sees a jar of medical blood which tempts her to drink, but she shatters everything instead. In a nearby scene, two vampire teenagers kill a family and engage in inappropriate behavior. Meanwhile, at the Hellsing Manor, Ceres is introduced to a giant rifle by Gareth and goes through training. Integra practices with her pistol and prepares her unit for action. The two young vampires go on a killing spree, causing the police to intervene, but they end up dying in action. Integra and her team close in on the murderers, and Alucard creates an illusion to defeat them. Ceres successfully shoots one of the killers, and Ferguson welcomes her to the Hellsing organization. They return to the manor, and Alucard praises Ceres for her work. He tells her to drink the medical blood to avoid weakness, but Ceres asserts that she has a name and refuses to be just referred to as Police Girl. Enrico Stivoletti, a college student turned into a vampire, tries to turn his childhood friend Mick into one too, but the attempt results in Mick's death. Enrico feels guilty, and is eventually put down by multiple people who barge into the room. At the Eurostar London Railway, a tall priest from Rome arrives to pick up a foreign student. In the London hospital, the dead college student's body undergoes an operation to remove the freak chip. Sir Integra and Lieutenant observe the operation and have a conversation. The doctor decides to keep the body as a man from Rome is coming to pick him up. Back at Hellsing Manor, Ceres struggles with drinking medical blood and is eventually talked to telepathically by Alucard. The Vatican agent Alexander Anderson is walking in the streets of London when he is approached by a prostitute. Alucard is ordered by Integra to appear in her office and they talk about the freak chip. After Integra receives a phone call, Alucard disappears. The college student wakes up and goes on a murder spree to find Nick, killing multiple police officers along the way. Integra is informed of the Vatican's involvement and orders Alucard and Ceres, along with Captain Gareth's squad, to deal with the situation. Ceres is shocked when Gareth is killed in front of her, and is then run through by the Vatican priest's sword. The priest condemns Ceres' vampiric existence and is about to kill Enrico when Alucard appears and kills him instead. The scene ends with Alucard plunging his hand into Enrico's heart, ending his life. This shocks Anderson and Ceres. Alucard, after disposing of Stivoletti, warns Anderson not to come here and tells Ceres to be quiet since she is weak from getting stabbed by Anderson's bayonet. Alexander boasts that the Vatican has been getting rid of monsters like Alucard and prepares his blessed bayonets to exterminate those who go against their god. Alucard pulls out his castle, ready for a showdown. Anderson rushes towards Alucard, missing 5 times with his bayonets, but eventually hits Alucard with his blessed weapon. However, Alucard gets his castle at point-blank range on Anderson's head, shooting him down. Alucard believes Anderson is dead until he regenerates and impales Alucard in the back with multiple bayonets. Alucard realizes Anderson is a human regenerator and becomes angry and frustrated, pointing his castle at him. But Integra intervenes, stopping them from causing further damage to the building. Integra scolds both Ceres and Alucard for their actions, but Alucard tells Ceres to drink his blood to become a true vampire. Ceres is hesitant and Alucard teleports away. Outside, Integra sees Anderson leaving with the Vatican, still visibly angry. The episode begins with a ghoul getting killed on screen with a quality similar to that of old Flash DVDs back in the 90s. The camera zooms in on the ghoul that got killed, before the screen fades away and the title card appears. Integra has her hands full trying to hide the existence of the Hellsing organization from the public eye. Hard to do when a 3-minute clip of a ghoul's death, with the Hellsing coat of arms clearly visible on the one who shot the ghoul, is being circulated on the internet, and Channel 10 is broadcasting footage of HO troops shooting at vampires. Due to the public's interest in reality television shows, snuff films of people being killed are hot commodities on the internet, and the HO is dedicated to snuffing them out. Having gotten word that a snuff filming is taking place in a secret location, HO's assault unit is dispatched to stop it. Led by Gareth's replacement, Captain Stedler, who seems to take delight in harassing Ceres with sexual innuendos. The team storms the building. Ceres is charged with the job of destroying the victims of a vampire before they can turn into ghouls. She also helps ferret out Flesh, the human who was filming the snuff. Ceres becomes concerned, however, when it appears that Stedler knew the targets were waiting for them on the 3rd floor, a fact that he failed to tell to the forward unit. Unfortunately, Flesh won't reveal whether he's working for any particular organization, saying only, "I watch what I want, and I show others what they want to watch." Some hours after the raid, Ceres returns to the building where she notices a video cam setup and is approached by 2 men claiming to be investigators. They order her to leave immediately, but she can't shake the feeling that there's more going on here than just Flesh videotaping a vampire killing humans and turning them into ghouls. Suddenly, she hears Alucard telepathically communicating with her. He tells her that the evidence is right before her eyes, if she will only see it. Meanwhile, another snuff film is being secretly shot. a vampire is preparing to bite a guy who has agreed to act in the film in return for a supply of drugs. Just as the vampire is about to bite the guy, the video connection goes dead, thanks to Alucard. After cursing out the vampire for his depravity, Alucard shoots him with his castle. The vampire falls against a window and breaks it, revealing Stedler and Kim, the Channel 10 news reporter, who are watching the making of the film. As Alucard aims his castle at Stedler and Kim, Sarah suddenly appears and tells her master that these two should be judged and punished by human law, not by vampire law. On second thought, Sarah admits that she loved to kill Stedler. As her finger curls around the trigger of her pistol, Commander Ferguson pokes his head in the door and assures Sarah that he will take care of it from here. He handcuffs Stedler and leads him away. Integra confronts Kim, who maintains that it is her journalistic duty to report to the public. Concerned more that Kim feels no guilt for watching the making of snuff films, Integra decides that manslaughter is insufficient punishment for her crime. Integra turns Kim over to Alucard, who has his first good meal in a long time. When Sarah later gets home, she drinks for the first time the blood that is waiting on her dinner table. Walter has gifted new weapons to Alucard and Sarah's. Alucard now has a 13mm Jackal semi-automatic that fires armor-piercing rounds of mercury bullets with macadamium-processed, pure silver bullet casings, all blessed, of course. Sarah's received a 30mm Halcon cannon that fires two types of ammunition: depleted uranium and explosive armor-piercing incendiary shells, combat effective against all ground and aerial weapons with the exception of battle tanks. And it's a good thing too, because the Valentine brothers, Luke and Jan, are gearing up their ghoul army and planning a full siege on Hellsing House. The first step is to dump the body of an undercover copy into the Thames with a Union Jack impaled through his chest. The next step is to place a fake phone call to the local police claiming that people are being attacked by vampires. When HO assault forces arrive to intervene, they find only one vampire and no victims, no bodies, no ghouls. Realizing it's a trap, Saris orders everyone to get out of the building. Fortunately, they all make it out before the bomb explodes. Integra calls a roundtable conference of the Knights to discuss possible ways of dealing with these freaks, as she refers to artificial vampires created by implanting a chip in their bodies. Sir Penwood starts out by berating Integra for the recent publicity the Hellsing organization garnered when Channel 10 broadcast footage of HO troops shooting at vampires. Integra points out that it's Sir Penwood's job to suppress media broadcasts, but they are both interrupted when Jan, Luke, and a busload of ghouls break through the fence and begin swarming into Hellsing House. As the ghouls make their way through the Hellsing House, killing Hellsing's people and turning them into more ghouls, the Knights of the Round Table sit tight in the third-floor conference room, knowing that the walls are protected by 15mm lead armor. Integra has already arranged an emergency escape plan, a helicopter on the roof, but the Knights are dismayed when they hear the sounds of the ghouls destroying the helicopter. Integra isn't worried, however. The real power of the Hellsing organization has yet to reveal himself, she assures them. But for the moment, with nowhere to run, their wisest course of action is to sit tight until reinforcements arrive. Jan Valentine has captured Commander Ferguson and beaten him within an inch of his life. Jan then broadcasts a message to Integra and the Knights in order to boast and to recommend that everybody start to pray or, better yet, commit suicide. As he ends his broadcast, Sarah steps into the room and open fires on him. She then picks up the injured commander and carries him off, not noticing that Jan has begun to heal. Jan contacts his brother Luke and expresses surprise that the HO now has two vampires in their employ. Sarah carries Farragut to her bedroom where she finds Alucard seated on a chair with his feet on her dinner table. Just waiting, he explains. They are joined by Walter Bornes, whom Alucard calls the Angel of Death. Walter is on his way to the third floor to rescue Integra, and he invites Sarah to join him. Walter steps out the door into the path of a horde of ghouls led by Jan Valentine. Jan orders his ghouls to kill Walter, but Walter calmly begins shooting out dozens of multi-filament wires from his fingertips. The wires encircle the necks of the ghouls and garrote them. Within seconds, the only one of the ghoul army left standing is Jan himself. When Walter mimics the boast that Jan sent to the Knights, Jan laughs, snaps his fingers, and a new army of ghouls appear behind him. Walter asks Sarah to provide him with artillery backup. With Walter advising her on which shells to use and where to aim them, Sarah takes out the rest of the ghouls and then tackles Jan to the floor. Walter asks Jan who gave him his freak chip, but Jan merely laughs, howls, and another horde of ghouls advance down the hallway. This time, however, the ghouls are the bodies of turned Hellsing soldiers. Sarah balks at having to kill her own people. In her hesitation, the ghouls swarm over her. A drop of ghoul spit falls on her face, and Sarah suddenly transforms into a vamp ghoul, her eyes turning black, and she turns on the ghouls. While Ceres is so engaged, Jan tries to run off, but Walter snares him with his wires. This time, however, Jan laughs and allows the wire to cut off his arm. Walter calls out Ceres' name, and she returns to herself. Meanwhile, Luke Valentine suddenly appears in the doorway to Ceres' bedroom. Alucard's wait is over. After Luke boasts about being the vampire who is going to put Alucard back in his grave, he and Alucard draw their guns and fire at each other. Of course, they both immediately heal and start firing on each other again. Alucard is a bit surprised at how quickly Luke can move, but he enjoys the challenge of a good fight. To show his dominance over Luke, Alucard decides to go into full form and obtains the Cromwell approval to do so. Right before Luke's eyes, Alucard transforms into a monstrous hellhound and bites off Luke's legs. As Luke cowers on the floor, Alucard looks on in disdain. "You're nothing but dog food," he says, and allows his hellhound to gobble Luke up. Jan has made it to the conference room where Integra and the knights are holed up. With his one good arm, he pulls out his gun, but Integra is faster. She blasts a half-dozen bullets into Jan's face. Jan laughs until he realizes that he's been hit with mercury ignition bullets. Integra asks Jan for the name of his master, but Jan ignites himself and disappears in the flames. Integra attends the funeral of her deceased Hellsing commando subordinates after being forced to euthanize the dying Hellsing commando ghouls. Ceres and Mason Fox are on a streak of eliminating ghouls, and as Integra and Walter try to figure out how to increase their manpower, Integra is invited by Enrico Maxwell to see her in a museum. Integra came alone to the museum, while Enrico arrived with a car and Ronaldo. Enrico tries to shake hands and make peace with Integra, but an angry Integra, after the Enrico Stivoletti incident, ignores him. After Enrico says that he's giving his condolences to the 135 members of the Hellsing organization's death, Integra bursts with anger and slaps the flower that was given by Enrico. She mentions the incident about Alexander Anderson, which resulted in the death of their commander and the violation of their agreement. Enrico quickly loses patience with Integra and insults her. He orders Ronaldo to show the freak chip. He explains that their research indicates that the freak chips came from England, resulting in the ghouls entering their territory. He tells Integra that Hellsing and the vampires are the same and calls Integra an English so, only to have his first meeting with Alucard. Enrico laughs it off and lets them know that Anderson is near Ceres and Mason Fox. Alucard is excited and teleports, saving Ceres while Anderson had already murdered the ghouls and a few of Mason's soldiers. Alucard then asks Anderson for a duel to the death, and Alexander agrees and prepares. Alexander throws multiple bayonets at Alucard, but Alucard uses a pole on the train to block them. Alucard unlocks his third eye and uses the jackal, shooting at Alexander's heart. Alexander blocks it with his bayonet, causing it to shatter. Alucard shoots Castle at Alexander, not giving him time to use another bayonet. Alexander tries to dodge it, but it was unsuccessful, and he is forced to run away, knowing that Alucard will fall into his trap. Alucard follows him and Alexander disappears. As Alucard tries to find him, he is surprised when Alexander holds his hand with Bible pages. Alexander comes out and runs straight towards Alucard with two bayonets that slice the train in half. He goes for Alucard's head. Alexander thinks Alucard is dead and begins to laugh. Alucard's body begins to regenerate, and a bat swarms Alexander, distracting him and giving Alucard enough time to regenerate fully. A terrified Alexander calls him a monster, but Alucard mocks him and shoots both of his arms with the jackal. Alexander manages to surprise both Ceres and Alucard when he dodges Alucard's final bullet on the jackal and runs straight towards Alucard with a bayonet that he grabbed with his mouth. Alucard shoots the bayonet out of Alexander's mouth, but Alexander does not give up. He only stops when he and Alucard stare face to face. He calls Alucard a bastard, and Alucard mocks him by asking if he's going to chew him to death. Alexander knows he can't defeat Alucard, so he backs away, ready to teleport. As he teleports, he states that he will defeat Alucard next time. Alucard, after Alexander retreats, says that he will never be defeated, and the episode ends with him laughing. Reports had come in about the investigation of a factory in Hong Kong thought to be manufacturing freak chips. By the time the Hong Kong police raided the factory, however, everything had been destroyed along with any possible evidence, and the chip designer's body later turned up in the Palo Alto desert. While scientists continue to pose their theories as to how the chip works, possibly on some latent human freak gene, Integra's only concern is to search and destroy the producers of the freak chips. Furthermore, she suspects that the producers are human, and that they are now on the run. Meanwhile, due to the shortage of HO troops, thanks to the Valentine brothers' massacre at the Hellsing mansion, Ceres has been kept busy training new candidates selected from D11, the SAS, and even foreign units with decent recommendations. One evening, feeling a bit saddened by the direction her life has taken over recent months, Ceres decides to pay a visit to the apartment where she used to live. The mail has piled up, but pictures of her and her father still remain on the bureau. She makes herself a steak and kidney pie and a cup of tea, but finds that she can't eat them anymore. Suddenly, there is a knock on the door. The visitor introduces himself as Harry Anders, an investigator with the MI5. After allowing Harry to eat her pie and drink her tea, Ceres learns that Harry once knew her father and now wants Ceres to accompany him on a visit to someone else. The someone else turns out to be a very young girl but very old vampire named Helena, who the MI5 have determined to be a solitary vampire who poses no threat to humans. Harry tells Helena about the recent invention of the freak chip and how it has been used to turn humans into ghouls. He asks Helena for her help in routing out any traitors in the vampire community. But Helena explains that there is no vampire community, as each vampire is a free individual. She suggests that Harry concentrate on finding the original vampire upon whom the freaks have been modeled. Harry and Ceres leave Helena, feeling sympathetic to the loneliness that Helena's immortality has placed on her. But Ceres is even more disconcerted when, after being dropped back at her apartment, Ceres sees Harry's car burst into flames. Back at the HO training camp, Integra has a vision of herself gagged and bound to a stake. It turns out that the vision is a joke thrust upon her by Alucard himself in order to show her how it feels to be hunted. Alucard explains that they are soon to be pitted against a strong, worthy enemy, a true undead newly arrived from the continent. Alucard can't wait. Just as the HO troops are about to storm Balkan Castle in the remote countryside because Integra thinks it may be inhabited by freaks, SAS troops arrive and order them to withdraw. The SAS has learned that the IRA has been using the castle as a weapons depot and that terrorists are hiding inside. Even if the terrorists are no longer human, the SAS feels that they must be made to pay for their crimes. Consequently, the SAS wants no interference from the HO. Reluctantly, Integra orders her troops to withdraw, but not before Ceres has a vision of a man stretched out on a cross and senses that there is something in the castle. As Ceres prepares to leave, she is mentally contacted by Alucard, who applauds her intuition but warns her that they are about to meet a foe like none they have met before and that Ceres should be prepared. Integra returns to HQ and learns that her younger sister Laura has come for an unexpected visit. At first, Integra is puzzled, but when she sees the blonde girl clad in a green dress, she orders Walter to prepare a room for her. Later that evening, Laura comes to Integra in her office, bears Integra's chest, and begins to suck her blood. Although she seems entranced, Integra suddenly remembers that she doesn't have a sister and recognizes Laura as Carmilla Miraluka, a Baupen chef from the Karnstein clan that the Hellsings destroyed centuries ago. When Integra confronts her, Laura/Carmilla plunges a dagger into Integra's abdomen and explains that she has been ordered to turn her into a ghoul, albeit very slowly. Somewhat earlier, a very tired Ceres tried to sleep but realized that she had yet to make her toilet and so got out of bed. While on her way to the bathroom, she again had a vision of a man stretched out on a cross and of a black dog strolling through the mansion. When she saw Laura and learned from Walter that Laura is Integra's sister, Ceres got a feeling that something wasn't right. Later, that feeling turns into a warning that Integra is in danger. Ceres tries to rush to Integra's aid, but Walter stops her from interrupting Integra by whipping out his multi-filament wires and slashing her cheek. Back at Bauben Castle, Paul Wilson, once an SAS trainee, has been implanted with freak chips when he tells a disembodied voice that he would like to live forever. Alucard confronts the voice who has infected Paul Wilson, learns that he calls himself Incognito, and that he, like Alucard, is an original vampire. Excitedly, Alucard challenges him to fight, but when Incognito lets it slip that Integra is dead, Alucard quickly returns to the Hellsing mansion, arriving just in time to break Walter from his trance, obliterate the Balkansha with a bullet from his jackal, and watch Integra plunge the dagger in her neck. "There is unpure blood in my veins," she cries as she falls to the floor, her blood spilling freely. As she undergoes an arterial anastomosis to close the wound in her neck, Integra dreams of her father, Sir Arthur Hellsing, her early training under him, and how he passed to her the leadership of the Hellsing organization as he lay on his deathbed. One of the most important things he taught her was that if she was ever confronted with a true crisis where all hope is lost, she must make her way to the sealed underground level of the Hellsing mansion. There, in the sublevels housing the Black Arts Library, Eugenics Laboratory, Interrogation Room, Dungeon, and Autopsy Chamber, she would find her ultimate protection. When young Integra overhears her uncle Richard making plans to kill her so that he can take over the Hellsing organization, Integra remembers her father's words and steals down to the underground. As she opens the sealed door, however, she is confronted by her uncle and his henchmen. Richard shoots Integra and tosses her into a cell where they are surprised to see what looks like a lifeless body. Before their eyes, the body suddenly comes to life and laps up Integra's blood. Then he begins tearing up Richard and his henchmen before he turns on Integra. It is a vampire, the very thing that Integra has been taught to kill. The vampire attempts to force Integra into recognizing him as her master, but Integra grabs a gun and points it at him, refusing to give in. "I would die before allowing a vampire to order me. I would die before giving up," she stands her ground. The vampire laughs, backs away, and bows to Integra, recognizing her as his master and a true successor to Arthur Hellsing. When Richard fires another bullet at Integra, the vampire steps in front of the bullet and takes it in his own arm. This was how Integra first met the vampire Alucard. As Integra awakens from her surgery, Incognito has begun awakening his army. Walter is briefing Integra on a report of an attack on a girls' dormitory in Cambridge. Some of the girls were drained of blood while others were just mutilated and killed. From what they can tell, the attackers were 60 SAS agents who went missing after the SAS's attack on Balkan Castle. All of the agents appeared to have been turned into freaks. There is also a report of a recent attack on Trafalgar Square, the intended target apparently the royal family. Consequently, the Queen's annual Maundy ceremony set for tomorrow has been cancelled. Walter has also received word that the weaponry used in the attack matches the equipment that the SAS was using. Because of Integra's delicate condition following surgery, a roundtable conference has been called in her absence at Westminster to discuss measures of retaliation. However, Integra deems the roundtable conference unnecessary, informing Walter that Her Majesty the Queen has another plan. While Scotland Yard is calming London for the terrorists thought to be behind the recent attacks, a surprise announcement is made that the Queen has decided to go ahead with the Maundy ceremony. However, it will be held at the Tower of London, and there will be no news coverage allowed during the event. As Integra dresses for the ceremony, Walter tries to talk her into not overexerting herself by attending the ceremony, but Integra informs Walter that the Maundy ceremony is actually going to be held secretly at the Hellsing mansion, and that the Queen is already on her way. Meanwhile, because Sarah's presence seems to affect the morale of the new recruits being trained to replace those that perished during the Valentine brothers' siege of the Hellsing mansion, Commander Ferguson has reassigned Sarah's from Ho's First Action Unit to a position as Field Agent for Information Retrieval. Of more concern to Sarah's is the fact that she has been having visions of Paul Wilson feasting on a young woman. At the end of the vision, Wilson turns to Sarah's and says, "You and I are the same, Sarah's." Hoping to talk to another vampire, Sarah's decides to pay a visit to Helena, the vampire introduced to her by Harry Anders. When she gets to Helena's house, however, Sarah's finds Incognito instead. Apparently, he has consumed Helena's body, and now he threatens to eat Sarah's too. As Sarah's holds him off with her pistol, Incognito begins to feel a bit queasy in his stomach. Suddenly, Helena's head and arms start protruding from his abdomen. Not worried, Incognito cuts off Helena's head. As her head lay bleeding on the floor, Helena informs Sarah's that Incognito serves human masters and warns that her comrades are about to enter a clever trap. As Sarah's leaves Helena's house, it goes up in flames. Back at Hellsing HQ, Ferguson receives a report that the Tower of London is under a freak attack. When he informs Integra, she simply smiles. "Good. They took the bait," she says, and continues to prepare for the arrival of the Queen. Integra is suddenly contacted by Alucard, who informs her that the Queen won't be coming. Then Walter informs her that HO troops are storming the tower, and it's all over the news. "This cannot be happening," Integra growls. As Sarah runs along the bank of the Thames toward the Tower of London, she tries to communicate with the HO troops to warn them of the trap. However, the battle is already underway. An explosion inside the tower is shooting plumes of smoke from the roof, and heavy gunfire is coming from inside. Helicopters are hovering over it, tanks have surrounded it, and Commander Ferguson's troops are storming it. On top of that, the British Army has entered the battle in their attempt to save the Queen, who isn't even there. Why hasn't the Round Table stopped them? Integra wonders. To Integra's surprise, Walter informs her that it was the Round Table Conference that gave the order to attack. "There is a Judas in our midst," Integra concludes, "and they are looking to destroy the honor and integrity of the Hellsing organization." Sarah's has reached the tower just in time to see Ferguson order the British Army to stand down and not impede Ho's forces. Suddenly, shots ring out, and Ferguson falls to the ground dead. In anger and desperation, Sarah's grabs her Halcon and cannon and races into the tower, taking out freaks wherever she can find them, urged onward by her master Alucard. Suddenly, she comes upon Paul Wilson as she has seen him in her visions. Wilson pins Ceres to the ground while taunting her with the fact that, because she chooses not to drink human blood, she is nothing more than a servant, not a true vampire. Still, he invites her to accept her nature and spend her life with him. Ceres replies by headbutting Wilson off from her. Wilson transforms from his human appearance into that of a demon, so Ceres rams a grenade into his mouth and blows him up. Two royal messengers arrive at Hellsing HQ with a message for Integra from the Queen. The Queen wishes Integra to know that, even under these trying circumstances, she recognizes the contribution that HO has made to Great Britain. Integra has simply to stand tall. The Queen promises that by morning, the Judas will be punished. Meanwhile, Alucard has called for a face-off with Incognito. They exchange gunfire, with Alucard managing to shoot off Incognito's arm. As Incognito lay wounded on the ground, Alucard asks him for the name of the human he serves, the one who has been imitating true vampires with dirty bugs. Incognito laughs and reminds Alucard that he's totally out of blessed bullets. With a wink of his eye, Incognito causes a massive laser to fire up and start shooting laser beams. As the beams slice through Alucard, Ceres suddenly appears with a magazine full of blessed bullets. She holds it out to Alucard, but a laser beam passes through her. In her weakened state and badly wounded, Ceres drops the magazine holding the blessed silver bullets for Alucard's jackal. Bleeding profusely, Ceres struggles to reach them but cannot, so Alucard uses his power to bring the magazine to him. He loads it into the jackal and fires the bullets at Incognito, blowing off his head. However, Incognito reconstitutes his head, still holding the bullets within, and fires them back at Alucard, laughing as Alucard succumbs to his own medicine. Ceres screams as she watches her master reduced to a puddle of blood on the floor, only his head remaining. As his eyes slowly close, Ceres cradles his head in her arms and licks the blood from his face, while Incognito tells her that she will soon lose all her blood too. High above the tower, Walter and Integra are approaching in a helicopter. When ordered by the British military to turn around, Walter ignores the warning, so the military commences to fire on them. Walter uses his multi-filament wires to lower Integra to the ground, then he crashes the helicopter as Integra looks on in horror. The next thing Integra knows is that she is pinned to the floor and that Incognito is standing over her chanting some sort of spell. Ron velde shukuku ni breften zarzes zarzes nerzis. He calls out, Agen dem dorten wiedenlar. Rotgar, set. Integra figures that he's attempting to conjure something from hell. Suddenly, an energy snake appears and begins to destroy portions of the tower and the soldiers within it. It is Set, the demon of chaos. After consuming Integra, Incognito intends to bond with Set in order to destroy London. Instead of panicking, Integra activates the Cromwell Initiative and attempts to summon Alucard, but Incognito informs her that Alucard is dead. When Alucard doesn't acknowledge her summons, Integra screams his name, her voice reverberating through the corridors of the tower. Blood from all those wounded and dead in the tower begins to pool into a vast river of blood, which is consumed by Alucard. When next time Ceres opens her eyes, Alucard stands over her, hale, hearty, and assuring Ceres that it's another beautiful moonlit night. Alucard confronts Incognito once more, vowing to send him off to a purgatory of eternal pain, which seems to please Incognito to no end. As the wounded Walter is wheeled on a gurney into an ambulance, Alucard and Incognito do battle with each other. Incognito boasts that he and Set will consume Alucard and force him to serve Set for eternity. So Alucard goes one better and calls forth his hellhounds. They take to the sky, where the hellhounds devour Set, leaving Alucard and Incognito facing each other on the ground. Vowing to kill Alucard forever, Incognito vomits into his weapon and aims it at Alucard. They rush at each other, each taking out a chunk of each other's abdomen. Of course, they immediately heal. Then Alucard has an idea. He picks up his broken jackal and uses it to melt a nearby silver cross and fashion it into a long spear. This he shoots at Incognito, impaling him. As Incognito dies, he asks Alucard who he really is. For a moment, Alucard's face changes to that of Vlad Tepes Dracula. Epilogue. The traitor discovered in the Round Table Conference has been secretly judged and silenced. MI5 is still searching for the organization responsible for creating the artificial vampires. In a locked and guarded cell somewhere under the Tower of London, Sir Integra sits on a cot, her hands shackled at the wrists. Alucard stands nearby and asks for her orders, reminding her of a question that he has asked her in the past. Does she want him to drink her blood, thus killing her, or would she like to drink his blood, thus making her into a vampire? It's your decision, he says. Integra does not reply,